Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got two more games in this play-in tournament, Nate, that are left on the slate for us on Friday night. We're recording this on Thursday, the day before, getting ahead of these lines with you guys. This is going to be our best bets video for these two games here. We've also got player props specifically in another video for you guys about both these games as well. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We're going to be coming back to you guys all playoffs long. Also have thelines.com, the site where we've got plenty of content up for you guys right now, including a lot of these player props and best bets we're talking about here. We've also got the odds finder tool up there. You can use that to make sure that you're getting the best juice back on all of these bets that we're making in the NBA this postseason. Nate, let's jump right into your first best bet from one of these two games on Friday night.
Yeah, I'm looking for Jimmy Butler performance doubles in the same game parlay here with Miami winning. I know the trend in this first round of playing games was for the underdog to cover and win, and Miami, no exception, just kind of got whooped by Atlanta, physically whooped, which is utterly stunning. And Jimmy, who did guarantee a win, and I think he comes back and performs. And you can be pretty conservative here with his parlay. I'm going 20 plus points, 6 plus rebounds in a win, and that's plus 135. You can jump that up to 25 rebounds and 25 points, same rebounds, and you're plus 200. You can keep going up if you want with the rebounds, but I would think that's right where you can expect his floor to be is 25 and 6. I mean, you look at his last two elimination games against Boston, they were obviously massive, 41 points per game, 9 rebounds, 31% usage rate in games 6 and 7 of that Eastern Conference Finals. And then even closeout games where there is more at stake, 32 against Philly, close them out in 43 minutes, 36% usage, 36 in 36 minutes to close out Atlanta last postseason. And it's really the minutes, the usage that just lead directly to points for Jimmy. We always talk in the regular season, like, I don't know how much he's going to come out and look for his shot. Like, I don't know if he's going to go hard for 35 minutes or if he's just going to like roll around and play like 31 and just facilitate. But even at the end of the regular season after a loss, he was like looking for that shot. He was playing 35 minutes a game, averaging 26 points per game his last 8 following a loss. I believe he only lost 2 in a row once in that span. And, he has pretty good numbers against Chicago, former team theory, yada, yada, yada. Look, I'm not buying the Bulls that much. I know you're going to talk about their defense and DeAndre DeRozan causing the Raptors to miss 18 free throws on Wednesday night is basically the only reason they won that game. I mean, whether it's them or whether it's just, whether it has anything to do with the Bulls or it's just another team favored in this really pressure-packed situation at home, choking, because that's what you saw a lot here in the play-in, is that you come in really tight if you're supposed to win the game. I don't know if that's what happened with Miami against Atlanta. I don't know if they were tight. They've kind of been in this weird funk all season where we can't really figure out what their deal is. I mean, we know their offense is bad, but Jimmy, is going to get his shot one way or another. So I think even if the offense breaks down, he'll find ways to score against the Bulls, who are most vulnerable really at the 3 and the 2 to an extent. I mean, with LaVine and DeRozan, I think Jimmy can go right at them and get his points.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy getting his points doesn't necessarily mean that I'm anti that just because I'm pro the Bulls covering the spread. As far as Jimmy goes in this game, talk about the revenge factor, whatever you want. I do believe in the Bulls defense, to be honest, and its ability to limit possessions and second chance points and offensive rebounds, etc. Like all those things, it's very good at. Jimmy doesn't really. He sort of defies any of the stuff that they do well anyway. So I think the points will be there for him. I think it's an elimination game and it's Jimmy. And this is kind of like a vibes play-in tournament. Like it's heavy on the vibes. How are the vibes for the team? And for the Bulls, like I think that they're honestly like a little bit better than what's going on with the Heat. Now, at the same time, like they're both similar in that like the Jimmy definitely has this attitude of I'm not going to let us lose. And I think the Bulls are just a little bit on the scrappy side at this point. I think they are well equipped to to defend the Heat and what they do well, not necessarily Jimmy, but maybe the other guys like Tyler Hero, and even Kyle Lowry, who, I mean, without Kyle Lowry, the Heat wouldn't have even been close in that game at any point. Yeah, it ended not that close, but at one point they were close because Kyle Lowry had like 27 points off of the bench for them. But I don't think you can rely on that in this one. And I'm just going to move on to my next bet in that sense, because it's Chicago to cover. Plus 5.5 is too much in a game where Chicago won all 3 meetings. There's plenty of like relative and relevant examples and use cases from those 3 meetings in terms of what the situation is going to be here on the road in Miami. Everybody's been playing in all 3 games, including Alex Caruso, by the way, which is incredible that he's played all 3 of those. And I think a big reason why they've been able to win all 3 against Miami is having not only Caruso, but then the combination of him at this point and Pat Bev. And yeah, I think it's fair to think that Miami's going to win, but I'm like the points there. I think it's going to be closer than that, and that Chicago can hang with them. And we saw that even if they do go down at one point, I know they had to rely on the Raptors to miss a lot of free throws, but I also think that everything else they did to limit what the Raptors want to do, crashing the boards, getting offensive rebounds, et cetera, getting out in transition and running. They weren't able to do any of that stuff because of the quality defense of Chicago at this point, what they're doing, especially on the road, 9-2 straight up and against the spread in their last 11 games, including that last one against Toronto there on the road, where they're allowing 106 points per game, number 1 in the league. And this Miami offense struggles, dude, when it doesn't have its shots going down. You know, obviously there's a pretty big discrepancy in its wins and losses, making 3 more threes and wins than losses. Decent stat. I mean, obviously you're going to probably shoot better, but the shooting just hasn't been there enough for them. And with these ball hawking guards, like I said, with the combination of Caruso and Pat Bev, it's nasty out there at this point. Like with Caruso in, their defensive ratings 3 points better per 100. With Pat Bev, since he's gotten there, it's gotten 3 points better per 100 as well, down to 111 of a defensive rating when Pat Bev is in the game. Miami in this situation too, do what you will with it. As far as covering goes, they're 11-26 against the spread when they're the home favorite. That's the second worst cover percentage in the league. Chicago 17-12 when they're the away dog, covering those spreads by about 4 points, which means they would still lose by about 1 or 2 points in this game, which feels about right. The bench way better right now for Chicago. I'll talk about Kobe White in the player props video specifically in part because of that, and in part because Kobe White's going to be someone I think you see a decent amount of against this Heat team, where they really need to find points against a good Heat defense that is capable of stopping what they want to do. But they've been a lot better guarding the paint and defending bigger players, honestly, has Miami, than the guards and the guard-oriented offense that is Chicago. So I think there's, everything else too for this game that is like what these teams have been doing well and not well. Points off of turnovers are going to be huge. I think that's I probably should have started with that stat as the reason that Chicago has won the first 3 and set it in tandem with talking about Pat Bev and Alex Caruso being out there. What has it meant? It meant that the Bulls have outscored Miami in terms of points off of turnovers 20-13. Getting 20 points a game off of turnovers for Chicago against Miami is like, are you even taking us seriously, Miami? Like, well, how are you just giving us the ball and giving us layups like this? We're not a fast break team. They have been, actually, by the way, weirdly, and maybe not that weird, but with the guards they have out there right now, like Caruso, etc., they have the 8th most fast break points per game over the last 15 games of the season. Does Chicago, and contribute that partly is attributable to all the turnovers that they're getting by playing such good defense. So Miami's going to struggle to score, in my opinion, and I think at the very worst, that's going to keep this game within 6 points. And Chicago has the ability to pull out a win. We saw them be the clutch team. DeMar DeRozan's like the 3rd best clutch player in the league this year. So there's plenty of reason to think that if they can keep this close down the stretch, they can also pull it out. But I'll just take the points.
Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather take the underdog spread in these play-in situations than the favorite. I don't necessarily believe Chicago is going to win, though. I mean, Miami, maybe they weren't taking them seriously throughout the regular season. That's what we've trying to determine from them is like, okay, they're just sleeping. Maybe they want to be in this play-in tournament, but then dropping it to Atlanta means like, yeah, the vibes are not great. Something's wrong here. Not to say that they're just like 1-2-3 Cancun, because they can get into a series with the Bucks and still give them trouble, right? I mean, that's still kind of their kind of rock fight. So I do think Miami wins this game. I have no problem with Chicago to cover. I think the safer way to play that, though, is this extremely low team total for Chicago, which is 100 or 101. I take them to go over that and at least be in this game down the stretch. And both teams going to get over 100 here, despite all the great defensive metrics. This is what we were on with Toronto and Chicago, and it still went over by a squeak where it closed, but it's just like an unbelievable Toronto leaving 18 points off the board. Moving on to the West here, and speaking of chokers, we got the Wolves at home against OKC. Plus 5.5 is the spread for the Thunder. Another one where you much rather have the underdog. I'm looking at a really juicy one here, though, and I'm trying to predict another collapse. Wolves to leave at halftime, Thunder to win is plus 700. So you get the same situation as the Lakers just pulled off here, where it might come out slow, but you will try to take advantage of the Wolves being this kind of weird collection of parts that has never really played together because Cat missed almost the entire season. Anthony Edwards is clearly dealing with wrist and injuries on top of coming back from that ankle late in the season. Rudy Gobert now comes back after they're fighting with teammates, and who knows how much they like him or what the future is. So the vibes are not great. OKC just playing with house money. You'll love to see that in this kind of tense environment, that they're going to be loose, and that's what we saw against the Pelicans. They were able to win that really close one against the Pels team that we both thought would use their experience to win it. And the Wolves, I mean, if anything, we've seen an experience of them collapsing. Like in that Memphis series last year, they averaged 31.5 in the first quarter. 32.5, excuse me. They led 3 times at halftime, and they lost 2 of those games. So, I mean, it's not totally out of the question or unprecedented to say they might get out to a hot start here and collapse. You can also play this safer by just saying OKC plus 2 on the spread in the second half, because, maybe OKC is leading at halftime. Maybe OKC just wins this game. That's basically what we're looking at here in terms of not trusting the Wolves. In the fourth quarter against the Lakers, they went 3 for 15 and had 6 turnovers. They shot 34% in the second half altogether, got outshot 13-3 at the free throw line, and that's their biggest weakness, right, is they gave up the most free throw attempts on the season. You're dealing with SGA, who averages 33 points, 10 free throw attempts against them this year, with Jaden McDaniels out there posting his good individual defensive stats. He's obviously not going to play the rest of the way here. And Cat and Ant both have pretty bad numbers against OKC. Not that there's like specifically great defensive personnel. I mean, Lou Dort is a pretty good matchup for Ant. But, I mean, it's just a good defensive scheme. And I mean, Cat in particular, in the fourth quarter a lot in that Memphis series was just like a disaster, right? I mean, and now he's got to play alongside Rudy, which hurts his offense more. You were correctly on him scoring a lot without Rudy in that Lakers game. But I don't trust this Wolves team to perform in crunch time. And, I mean, neither of these teams have particularly impressive clutch numbers, but I mean what we just saw from SGA and company in a back and forth game in New Orleans, I'd rather take the team playing for house money to close this one out.
Totally. Totally. I mean, we'll see how they come out in the first half too. I think we both correctly predicted, obviously, that they were going to respond well against the Lakers after losing Rudy. It ended up being their downfall that they didn't have somebody to stop the Lakers just crushing the basket and going to the paint. But they also didn't really have anybody for Dennis Schroeder, by the way, who's been looking really, really good. I'll talk about that a bit more in player props as well, because I'm eyeing the opposing point guard playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves right now, unshockingly. But my second pick, Nate, is just to take the points, and it continues to rise at +5. Is when I first hit it for OKC, +5.5. It's already moving up to in some books, and I'm like very happy with that. If you want to parlay the Thunder spread and the Bulls spread as well, you go ahead and get that up all the way up to +265 instead of just taking one of them. You could also just hit that OKC money line and feel good about that, which we're also saying. I know you've juiced that up a lot, which I love, with the idea of them potentially not being up at the half and then still being able to come back, and that was pretty much the case for them in their last game against the Pels, because of the way that the Pels guarded SGA so well and really just took him out of the game, and then really didn't seem to continue bringing the double team. And that was a huge reason that he was able to go off for damn near 20 points in the third quarter. I have a lot of the same stuff that you have when it comes to why you should like OKC to win this game. And the second half stuff is all relevant. I'll just keep it to the, really around the paint stuff. Third most points in the paint on the season for OKC, which you talk about, and the amount of points they score from there. Interestingly, it's not like, when Rudy's on the floor, the other team is still getting more than 1 point in the paint per minute. Say that 5 times fast. So in 31 minutes in 30 minutes a game that Rudy's on the floor, they're still allowing 31 paint points during that time. So when he's on the floor, when he's off the floor, they're just letting people get to the rim. And like you said, the free throws is a huge part of that. They're not only letting them get to the rim, they're fouling them when they get there, and either giving up and ones, obviously, or a couple free throws, which is why they're just giving up so many of them. And they're also just way worse without Jalen McDaniels. It's a much smaller sample size. They've got 4 games now without him, but in those 4 games, their defensive rating is 124.5 versus 114 when he's in there for the 79 games. And one of those was he and Rudy both not playing, obviously, including that second half after he punched a wall and Rudy punched a teammate. But now I think it's a little bit more kumbaya, apparently, because Kyle Anderson said shit happens, is what really, and I think what he means is I'll be waiting for you later, Rudy, at some point. And without Gobert at this point, they obviously are a lot better on offense. They didn't necessarily show it, mostly because Ant had those 9 points in 43 minutes in that other game. And if he's going to do anything close to that in this one, which I think we're probably expecting a bit of an under more so from him, especially if he's not feeling well, then this is not a game that you feel comfortable doing anything with Minnesota on. And so 5 points, I'll definitely take that. I'm going to put a little bit on the money line, and I'm going to take a closer look at all of your second half fading the Wolves, but potentially leading at the half stuff, because I think 7-1 on your money sounds really good as well.
Yeah, they offer these things like biggest comeback, 10 plus points, and it's only plus 190 for the Thunder, though. Plus 700 is insane to just say they could be down 2 points at the half. They were down 6 at NOLA, and they won the game. You could be down just a couple, and this, it's a crazy amount of odds there on the money line. So that's why I like attacking it this way.
I have to ask, do you what's that bet that the biggest comeback bet? Is that something that is specific to OKC has to come back by 10 points, or either team comes
They give
back?
you a list of options, right? Like OKC to be down 10 and come back is plus 190, Minnesota to be down 10, etc.
Love that.
And I don't know if the Wolves are just going to they obviously have to have some internal discussion about closing games better. They do have Mike Conley, which they didn't have last year, stabilizing presence. They are on 2 days rest here. But yeah, I more just trust OKC to just keep playing young, wild, and free, right, baby? And Mark Dagnall, sleeper coach who's done an excellent job. Really? And I think with Lou Dort out there guarding Ant, I like their chances.
I love it. Yeah, the Wolves have broke the record this season for the most double-digit leads blown in a game, meaning that the other team had to win, not just come back and lead at some point, right? You have to blow the final whistle as well and be losing when the clock goes off. But they did that more than any team in the history of the league. So at plus 190 for the Thunder to do that sounds great. Let's tack it on to the plus 700 that they'll be losing at the half and continue on. So that is all the time we have for you, though, in the Best Bets video here. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We've each got a couple of player props specifically in a different video as well. So until we see you next, happy betting.